everyone. Welcome to Tea with Tatyana. I am your host, Tatyana. I am the Community Affairs Manager here at Mazzoni, and I'm so excited to bring you episode 3. And I would like to introduce my guests. They are the IRC. They are an intricate part of the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference, and I am so excited to have them here today. Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
So let's start with telling the viewers who you are. Who wants to go first?
Me, because I have a very weird name. So just to avoid anybody having to try and pronounce it, it's pronounced Kaelea. So my name is Kaelea Shaner. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm excited to be here.
Glad to have you here.
I guess I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Mikah Thomas. I use they, he pronouns. That's all I have. I don't have anything else for this day. And I guess I'll pass it to Jayden.
Thanks, Mikah. I'm Jayden Sampson, and my pronouns are he and him. And I'm just happy to be here to lend a voice to what we do for the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference.
Great. I'm happy to have you all here once again. So let's get into the first segment. This is the segment that I like to call Spill the Tea. So this is the part where we just get to know each other better. I like to ask a icebreaker question. So today's question is, what is the craziest request you have gotten in your career?
Oh, I'll go first. Before my LGBTQ realm of working, the most craziest request I had was to work in 3 departments at one time throughout the building. It was a lot of like intakes and onboarding of different clients. So it was really hard to run around 3 flights of stairs and answer 3 different phones and forwarding calls. And then looking back on it, I should have probably just said no. We needed more staff.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. Anyone else want to answer?
I have one. So I don't know if this is a request. Like the request itself isn't crazy. It's more the reasoning behind the request.
Okay.
So I used to work in admissions for a university, and I got a call from somebody who asked me to put them through to the art department. And this was a school that was very much more business, criminal justice, IT kind of degree. So I was like, we don't have an art department. And it's like, and I asked, what you're looking for. And they were like, oh, I just wanted to see if you could put me in touch with whoever hires the models for like the art classes, because I'm interested in being like a nude model or something for the art classes. And I was like, I don't think we have those here, but best of luck in your search. And I still think about that to this day.
That's pretty funny.
I wish I had something. I don't have anything funny because I don't really. When I got this question, I was like, the craziest request. Well, I was a criminal defense attorney, so I just had like really interesting fact scenarios. But as I thought about this, I thought about something that I've never forgotten that really struck me. And it was years ago when I was living in West Philadelphia. And I was walking my dog down the street. I forget which street it was. And there was a gentleman, another brother, across the street. And he was walking the opposite direction. And there was a older white female walking towards him. And so I'm walking actually the other way. I noticed them, but I keep on going. And then I hear, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And I turn, and this guy is coming to me, and he said, "That woman moved her purse like I'm going to steal from her. Do I look like I'm going to steal from somebody?" But what I realized in that moment, and this is why when I saw this question, I kind of thought about that because it wasn't crazy, was I was a witness to and a presence for this brother's psychic pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so for 30 to 45 minutes, he talked about how upset he was by what happened. And I have never forgotten that. So even though I transitioned to present as male some years ago, because of that experience, I have always honored and respected the experience of my cisgender brothers.
Yes.
Who experience a kind of psychic trauma on a daily basis that I did not experience being grown up and socialized as an African American woman. It was such a blessing, and I felt honestly honored that my higher power had put me in a position so that he could talk to me and not take that anger out on himself or his loved ones. And so that was a very poignant moment for me. And that was when I was in my like late 20s, and I'm 54 now. So that's how significant that was for me. And then of course I've had a career as a criminal defense attorney. There's lots of crazy stories there, but nothing as poignant really as that event for me. So that's how I looked at that question. I had to change it around a little bit. I hope you all don't mind. Thanks for listening.
No, I definitely enjoyed that perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So this next segment is called Let's Talk About Sex. So here at Mazzoni, we like to promote healthy sexual relationships and ask questions during the segment that kind of sparks that. So the question is, do you prefer making out or cuddling?
I guess I'll go again. I am a heavy cuddler, and it's funny. I went to sleep last night forgetting that I read this question, but was thinking about it. I love to cuddle, but there is something special about being able to make out, and I think it's the concept of like making out when you were kids. Um, but I like holding hands too, so I think I would rather hold hands than any of them. So I'm not going to answer the either or. I like holding hands.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, Micah, I'm in like the same boat of trying to like pick with either or because they're very different vibes, right? Like cuddling is like sleepy, it's like cozy, maybe it's raining outside and there's just like some junk on TV and it's just like serenity embodied, right? And then making out to me is that goes back to like the ooh, like we're making out, right? Like, is a very different vibe. So it's really hard to pick one over the other. Yeah, I don't know. And holding hands is great too. Like, yes, physical displays of affection. Like, let's do that always.
It's good. It's okay to pick both if you want to.
I'm with Micah. I'm total makeout guy, and I am a hold hands. I'm not a cuddler though, really. You need to get your 8 hours of sleep, and then you need to keep it moving. So we can do all that later, but we need this sleep thing here. So that's why I'm
Jayden, how do you think I
intentional.
get 8 hours of sleep? It's because I cuddle beforehand to get me to sleep.
Have you ever been angry because you cuddle? Like, it's like an innate thing, but like you might move the blanket, the air might be on, the air might hit my back. Now I'm over here upset. I'm trying to get under you. I got cold feet. Or what if you got sharp toenails, your toenails cutting people?
Yes.
Cuddling can be very dangerous. Kissing, you gotta make sure breath is okay. It's not too wet, unless that's what you like. It's not too dry. So I think holding hands is real
The
safe.
safe way. That's great. Okay, so our next segment is Spark the Conversation. Um get to know what you all do on the IRC, how important it is. I'm so sad that I'm not on the IRC anymore, but I feel at home talking to you all. Um so for the viewers, what is the IRC?
Well, the IRC is a committee of community members, and interdisciplinary people. Sorry, I got a dog and a kid playing. Sorry. But the IRC is a group of community members and interdisciplinary people, and basically what we do is we review, score, and select the content of like the workshops and of different things of that nature that happens at the Trans Wellness Conference.
I guess that sums it up for all of you, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
To take the question a little bit further, what's the feeling that you get from being a part of the IRC?
The feeling that I get from the IRC sometimes is overwhelming because Danny has done such a great job in making sure that we do what our part is. And sometimes we are so tied up in our own lives that we kind of forget to do that part. So I feel like Danny comes back in and says, hey, let's get on top of these things. One of the things that I really appreciated about the IRC was actually being able to interview other community members to see if they why they were interested in being a part of the IRC, and then going back to the team and having the conversations about who would be good fits and whatnot.
Great.
I think for me, the feeling I get from the IRC is when I first joined was one of awe and a little bit like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. Like, these are some amazing people doing some amazing things. And I still have that feeling of awe and appreciation for everybody's kind of expertise and bringing their own story to this like really critical process for the conference. And I think that's really, for lack of a better term, the vibe of the IRC is unique stories coming together to achieve a unifying sense of trans community, right? Which is in effect the broader goal of the conference in a way.
Yeah, I love that.
I would say that one of the feelings I've always gotten from being a member of the committee for a long time is no matter what agita was going on with Mazzoni or going on within the committee itself, what always grounded me was knowing that this conference saves lives. And I can feel rather fired up about that when I think or look at people starting to squabble and getting personalities in the way of principles, when I know for a fact that this conference has saved lives.
Yes.
Somebody out in some small part of Kentucky or Wyoming or Indiana or Pennsylvania finds out about this conference and it keeps them from ending their lives.
Yeah.
And so I know I got to watch myself because as soon as I start to see, personalities and all sorts of agita get in the way, I'm like, do not forget that this conference saves lives.
Yes.
And so that for me is what I always feel and, check into as I'm doing the work for this committee.
Thank you for that. I think that's very important. And I'm glad that you brought that to the space because I don't think that a lot of people realize the impact that the conference has. So thank you for that. The next question. Why do you think it's important for Mazzoni to have a structure in place like the IRC for the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference?
I think it's really good to harken back to kind of the feeling I get from being on the committee is also speaks to its importance structurally, right? Like having people from many different backgrounds to look at a conference or submissions to a conference that come from many different backgrounds. So GenTrack and ProTrack obviously kind of one is very specific to sort of healthcare fields and medical practitioners, and GenTrack can be, open season essentially. So I think it's important to have people who represent the like beautiful tapestry that is the trans community, so that we're representing as many of those voices in the actual content of the conference as well too.
I
think the only thing I would add, and I really like how Kaelea used the word tapestry. From my perspective, I look at it as a tapestry over a long period of time. And it's interesting because when when this committee was first came together, it was under less than auspicious circumstances. And yet, I would have to say, having been in many iterations of the committee, that I appreciate the laser focus on getting community in and using the existing base of Mazzoni to bring that community in. Before, when we would ask people to be on the committee, it would be like at the end of the conference, and it'd be kind of word of mouth. You know, it wasn't quite this way. And I think there's benefits to both, but I think this is an easier way and for people to come on board. And I appreciate this new structure.
So next question. Has community views on the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference made your role more difficult?
See, I read the question different. I thought it said, and no, that is the question, but I thought the question was, has it made you, like, what has it made you want to bring to the table? Because I think the community views on the Trans Wellness Conference is what made me become more involved.
Okay.
It's definitely made me become more involved, especially going from being like a vendor for a community-based organization to actually being able to enjoy the conference for yourself. And I think that touches kind of on the community views, even though it's centralized in Philadelphia and I, in fact, live in Philadelphia, the IRC actually expands all over the United States of people who are on the IRC. So I think if anything, what has made it difficult is not the community views, but it's actually, like the pandemic.
I think at times the thing that's made it a little bit more difficult is not so much Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference, but how people view Mazzoni.
Yes.
And I think that that's where sometimes it's made it a little bit more difficult. So I think because people have a certain perception about Mazzoni, sometimes they then impose that same perception on a conference that originally was not part of Mazzoni from its very inception, right? As people know, Arcilla and actually Ron at Mazzoni was really Arcilla who came up with the idea for the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference 21 years ago, and Mazzoni supported it through copy machines and meeting at Wash West. So over the years, as Mazzoni's, share value has gone up and down, sometimes that can have a negative effect on the conference.
I definitely appreciate you once again bringing that into the space. When I was a member of the IRC, that definitely was a big thing. And even working here sometimes is challenging because of people's views on, things that had happened. So I'm glad that you brought that in the space. And I'm very hopeful with our new PEO that we can begin to heal and go in the right direction. So thank you. The next question is, do you think anything is missing from the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference that is not currently in place, that you would like to see in place?
Going off of what Jayden just spoke about, I would actually love like some sort of homage or like a historical understanding of the creation of like LGBTQ history, trans history, not only in Philadelphia, but like what it looked like the Stonewall riots looked like it did in New York, but what was Philadelphia going through the same time when Stonewall was happening? And I think that's something that we see today being created on the news, but basically being able to get the history of like where we started and where we are and what's moving. I would love to see that, just so that we can get the accurate history and understanding of how all of us got here and what we're really fighting for.
Thank you.
I would also speak to kind of what you're talking about, Mikah, the idea that the conference is not strictly Philly centric. And I think you say what would I like to see different is not different so much as just more, right? Like more submissions from more people from other places, you know, in the world where trans people might have a very different experience than we do in Philadelphia. As well. So just to kind of reaffirm the idea that this is a national conference, an international conference, right? Like, let's blow this up,
Yeah.
I think is what I would love to say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Kaelea. I think, you know, over the years, I have wished for more API presence, you know, more indigenous presence, Latinx presence, more differently able presence, because the more voices we have in the planning process, the more we can attract workshops that meet the needs of the entire tapestry of the transgender experience. And I really hope that the IRC, now going into its third iteration, will start to attract more people who have very diverse experiences, because that would really enrich, I think, what the work that we're doing. And so I just want more diverse voices on the committee.
Hopefully interviews like this will move forward to let people know who the IRC is, and it's not just Mazzoni making these decisions, and, you know, putting a face to the real people who are doing the real work, because you all are doing the real work, the hard stuff. That brings me to my next question. What goes into looking what goes into choosing a workshop? Like, what do you all look for? Would be my next question.
It's funny you say that, because the call for proposals, we'll be reviewing those in the next coming week. Okay.
And what will you be looking for?
I will be looking to follow the rubric in place.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna say. The safe answer. I don't want to be biased when I read anything, but like, we also are supposed to make sure that, you know, things are transphobic, homophobic, things of that nature.
Okay. Can we speak a little bit about the rubric? Anyone?
Yeah, we tend to look for things that are grounded in research, that are highlighting a diverse array of trans voices, and not just from, you know, white trans voices too, like BIPOC trans voices, representation that we haven't had in the conference before. This past year was my first year on the IRC. So what was really cool for me when going over the submissions was hearing from people who had reviewed submissions in the past and say, we've done this, we've done that, or we've seen this before, or this is making a return, or we need to emphasize this more. So I think we look for not just a diversity in the people who are presenting or offering these proposals, but also kind of a diverse array of topics. We also, you know, make sure that, you know, the people who are presenting, as Mikah said, you know, don't have kind of like that sort of even underlying transphobia, or kind of like, what is that? Oh my goodness. Transmedicalism. That I'm always kind of like on the lookout for when kind of talking about trans topics with other trans people. So stuff like that is critical to our review of proposals.
Thank you.
And if I could just add on what Mikah and Kaelea said, we also are, I'll tell you things that we're also on the lookout against.
Yes.
We don't want the workshop in which you're marketing your online business,
Yes.
you know, covered, window dressed up as some type of educational opportunity, and what you're really doing is marketing your product. We are all for supporting transgender, trans businesses, you know, business run and operated by trans folks. And we want to make sure we create a platform for that. But the workshop submissions should not be that platform. So we look for an educational focus. You know, years and years ago when we had the conference, everybody was telling their personal story. That was like their whole workshop. Now, your personal story is important. Everyone's personal story is important, but you need to be about focusing on the people who are at the conference, not on yourself.
Yes.
And so we look for, did you do research in this subject? Or are you making the mistake that many people are in the news for today, which is talking about pseudoscience? As folks, part of the transgender community, no matter where you are or how you identify on that spectrum, we cannot afford for our bodies and our minds to be exposed to concepts that are not proven in some type of rigorous scientific process. Again, your personal story, totally different.
Yes.
But when you come out with words like, well, you better have we all backed up, because we don't want to be part of the internet disaster of stuff that's not true. And we do see that sometimes, and so we look for it. So we are caretakers, right? As the IRC, we are caretakers.
Yes.
And I think we take our task very seriously, which is why, Mikah says we have a rubric, because we want to make sure that we are taking care to the best that we can, as many needs under the trans umbrella, so that when people come to this conference, they're not traumatized. We've had to talk to some speakers. There's one particular one, we've had to educate this guy over and over again, and we've come to a conclusion that if he doesn't get it together, he's out. We don't want to expose folks who come to this conference to people who could damage or traumatize them in any way.
Thank you. Workshop submissions, like you all have just spoke to, are a big part of the process. What workshops are you hoping to see that haven't been submitted in the past? Workshops that you would hope more people would submit? Yeah.
Dating in the trans community, anything that's Black represented, and how we as trans folks can be allies to our LGBT community. I think a lot of people think that it's literally trans specified, but they don't understand it's an ally, and it's actually the Trans Wellness Conference could be a tool to not just treat LGBT folks better, but to treat all people better.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo some of that sentiment too. And I think more on intersectionality and unpacking our own privilege, even as trans individuals. Understanding the ways in which our identities kind of impact other members of our own community.
Yeah.
And not that we don't get submissions to this effect either, but I would love to see more on, spirituality, religion, and kind of like communities of belief. Yes. That one could kind of tie back to wellness and that demonstrate acceptance of trans identities.
That's good. Thank you. I guess this question would be for Jayden. You're currently the longest standing IRC member, right?
Yeah. It's been 20 years.
How have you seen the conference change over the years?
Well, when I saw this question, I wanted to be short, so I'm going to be short. I wrote down 4 bullet points because I am notoriously a little verbose, and so I do try to be short. So I'm going to be short here. So here's what I wrote down. So I've been on the planning committee for 20 years. I started in the second year of the conference, and in the second year, this conference had 75 people and was held over at Art Street Friends over there in Old City. And over the years, from 75 people to when we got to the convention center, we've had it up to 5,000 and 6,000 people come through the doors of this conference. And it has been nothing short of amazing and a miracle to me to see the diversity of people come through. So that's the first point. The second point is at times we've had to a greater number of voices of parents. And that was a pivotal moment in the conference when one year we had all these parents show up and we didn't have any programming.
Wow.
And one parent in particular might stand out because they have a TV special. Jazz's parents had no idea what to do. They had no resources in California. They flew from California to Pennsylvania to the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference because it was the only game in town. And now Jazz is everywhere. She's looking all fly and everything, you know. It's really amazing. Number three, the cost for this conference is phenomenal. We used to run this conference on the leftover money from Ryan White. So before we became a program of Mazzoni, we had a conduit, we had a fiscal conduit, and they gave us their leftover money from Ryan White. And at one point we were like, it was like $8,000. We were like, that's so much money. But it turned out in another year after that, we planned the entire conference and the Ryan White money was no longer available. As many of you may who are in this world and may realize that money stopped. And here we were, paper signed, and that's when we went to Mazzoni. And that's when I said to Nurit Shine, Nurit said, we'll help you, but you have to become a program of Mazzoni. I said, Nurit, we'll become a program of Mazzoni under one circumstance, and it must be guaranteed that this conference never has a cost to the people attending it. And I know people have lots of opinions about previous directors, but Nurit held her promise. And as a result, we are standing here today able to put on a conference, which is now, I'm just going to say a number. I hope I don't get in trouble, but I'm saying it because I want the community to know. $500,000 is what this conference cost.
Yes.
$500,000. And we're the volunteers, but you talk about the folks at Mazzoni who are the workhorses in raising the money. We have, because this is important. I remember when we used to go out door to door to vendors to get them to sign up to be vendors. We don't have to do that anymore. We can focus on the guts of this program, which is the programming, because of what Nurit Shine promised to do. And that promise has not been broken. So my last point was that we've had greater voices representing many facets of the trans community come in and out. But the one place that I think we really have struggled is the trans women of color.
Yes.
And, that has been a place where we have really not had a consistent representation. So I was thrilled when more trans women would show up, but then they would leave. So that's one place where I hope we continue to work and we continue to be sensitive to, like Kaelea was saying, to our own privilege. Not everybody can show up at a meeting. Some folks have a 9-to-5 or an hourly gig and they can't be here. But we should still do the best we can to represent their voices. So those are the points, those are the things I wanted to share that in a very quick fashion that I've seen change over the 20 years.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's very important. All the things that you said that the community hears, I actually got chills as you were saying certain things. Mazzoni does have a history, but being here and watching folks raise money for this conference and keeping that promise of it being free honestly sent chills through me just now. And I appreciate you for bringing that to community's attention. I have no more questions. I think Jayden, you ended it beautifully. I just want to open it up if it's any projects that you all are working on that you want to tell community about or your work that you do. Just want to open the floor to you all. And once again, thank you for joining me today.
I just want to thank my colleagues, the folks who came on, and the committee is just amazing. I mean, some of us, but this is just a small smattering. The folks on this committee are just outstanding, and I just want to extend a hello to those folks and acknowledge the work that they do and acknowledge the work that Danny's just been amazing, and acknowledge Danny's work as well. So thank you.
And I want to add, if anyone wants to submit a general track workshop or anything, you have until March the 6th to put your proposal in. You can go Google Trans Wellness Conference, and you can go right to this event page, and you can propose your workshop there. And we can't wait to review it.
Exactly. And I also want to echo Jayden, lift up Danny. Danny was just absolutely instrumental in me getting top surgery at the end of last year. Like, massive, massive help, endless source of resources. Everyone in this community is just blows me away with how supportive and how much of a wealth of knowledge and love that we all are. So I want to lift up our host, Tatyana, and Jayden and Mikah for being here with me and chatting. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you all for being here. Shout out to Danny. This was their wonderful idea. And that is it for me. See you next time.